The sharp sting of cigarette smoke hit me before I even saw them. Baltimore's humid night air carried the scent like an omen, mixing with the distant aroma of roasted coffee and old brick. I wasn't supposed to be here, just a spontaneous walk after a long day, trying to clear my head beneath the glow of historic gas streetlights. But fate, it seemed, had a cruel sense of timing. As I rounded the corner by the weathered Lafayette Square fountain, my eyes landed on a small outdoor cafe. And there she was. Allison. My wife of 12 years. Sitting across from him. The man leaned forward, his face lit by the soft flicker of a lantern dangling above their table. Ryan. I recognized him instantly from the travel club photos Allison had shown me, his smile always a little too practiced, too white, like someone rehearsing charm in front of a mirror. His hand rested on the table, fingers casually brushing against hers as they laughed quietly, cocooned in a world that didn't include me. For a moment, my legs locked in place. My heartbeat surged against my ribs, not pounding but tight, like a fist gripping my chest from the inside. I forced myself to breathe slowly, counting each second to stop the trembling that threatened to spread from my fingertips. Allison's face glowed beneath the amber light. She looked different, not in appearance, but in expression. Lighter. Freer. Her hair was swept back in soft waves, a delicate pendant around her neck catching the lantern's gleam. The very pendant I had given her on our 10th anniversary. She wore it while sharing whispered jokes and secret smiles with someone else. I stepped back into the shadow of a lamppost, watching without blinking. My mind, always careful, always structured, began cataloging every detail: the time, 9:42 p.m., the place, Old Market Café, corner of Charles Street, the way Ryan's thumb stroked her knuckles as she leaned forward, nodding, completely absorbed. The bitter taste of old smoke hung on my tongue, mingling with the sharp edge of betrayal that sliced through my throat. But I didn't move. No angry outburst. No rush toward them. Not yet. Instead, I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out my phone. The camera shutter was silent as I snapped several photos, time-stamped, clear, undeniable. My lawyer's voice echoed in my head from a seminar I once attended for work: always gather evidence first. Emotion later. I slipped the phone back into my pocket and looked up once more. They rose from the table, Ryan offering his hand gallantly as Allison stood. They walked side by side, close but not touching, down the narrow brick path toward the waterfront. Their silhouettes blended into the halo of streetlight fog, disappearing like ghosts into the Baltimore night. I stood there for a long time, listening to the distant horns of ships in the harbor, my breath measured and cold against the warm night air. This wasn't how I expected to spend my evening. But then again, I hadn't expected betrayal to find me at the corner of Charles and Lafayette, either. Finally, I turned and walked in the opposite direction, my mind already beginning to organize the next steps. The pain was there, raw and searing, but buried beneath it, something else was taking shape. A quiet, steady resolve. I used to believe that Allison and I were unshakable. We met on an unusually warm October afternoon, both reaching for the same antique globe at a local estate sale. She laughed first, that soft, melodic sound that always reminded me of wind chimes swaying in a breeze. One conversation led to another, and within 2 years, we were married, our lives weaving effortlessly together like two rivers merging. Our home became our shared canvas. The old townhouse on Preston Street, with its creaky staircases and stubborn plumbing, was our first major project. We stripped wallpaper, refinished the hardwood floors, painted rooms late into the night, sometimes pausing for wine breaks on the front porch while watching the city breathe beneath us. Allison always had the vision, I provided the steady hands. Then came Madison, our daughter, our light. The nights of sleepless feedings and diaper changes only strengthened our bond, or so I thought. We built traditions: Sunday morning pancakes, movie nights, annual trips to Cape May. Life was predictable, and in that predictability, I found comfort. Stability. But comfort, I've learned, can be dangerous. It dulls your senses. The first signs were subtle. Small things that I brushed aside at the time. One evening, about 6 months ago, she came home late from what was supposed to be a routine travel club meeting. Ryan wanted to show us a few new travel packages, she said, kicking off her heels and loosening her hair with a casual shake. It ran longer than expected. I noticed her flushed cheeks, but convinced myself it was the wine they'd shared during the presentation. Then there were the receipts, small charges from boutique shops in neighborhoods we rarely visited. A spa on Lombard Street. A florist near Fells Point. I asked once, jokingly, about the flowers. She smiled and said, "Oh, those were for the club's charity auction." I accepted the answer without pressing. The phone calls were next. Late-night conversations that she took on the back porch, her voice hushed but animated. When I'd step outside, she'd quickly end the call, offering a thin excuse, just finalizing some trip details with Ryan. Ryan. At first, I didn't even consider him a threat. He was younger, charming in an obvious sort of way, but I trusted Allison. We had built too much together for me to believe she could risk it. Yet his name began appearing more often in casual conversations. Ryan suggested we add Charleston to the next trip. Ryan knows this amazing little bed and breakfast in Vermont. I began to notice how often she wore that pendant necklace when she left for club events. The same necklace I'd given her as a token of our years together. A symbol now quietly repurposed. I told myself I was being paranoid. That marriage required trust. But doubt is insidious. It creeps into the quiet spaces of your mind and lingers. Eventually, I couldn't ignore it any longer. I started small, reviewing our shared credit card statements more carefully. I cross-referenced dates and times with her claimed schedule. Strange inconsistencies emerged: hotel charges billed under generic merchant names, car service rides that began and ended nowhere near club meeting locations. One evening, while Allison was out, I found her iPad unlocked on the kitchen counter. I hesitated, knowing that once I crossed this threshold, there would be no turning back. But the urge to know outweighed everything. In her messages, I found carefully deleted conversations, but technology has its gaps. Some notifications still lingered in the system logs, brief previews of texts. "Tonight was perfect. Same place next week. I can't stop thinking about you." Each fragment was a puzzle piece. Incomplete, but damning when combined. Even her calendar app told part of the story. Appointments listed as club planning coincided perfectly with the boutique receipts and hotel charges. She had built a secondary life within the shadows of our routine. Still, I said nothing. No accusations. No confrontations. Instead, I quietly started my own form of preparation. I bought a small external hard drive and backed up every piece of financial data I could access. I set up alerts on our joint accounts to notify me of unusual charges. I even installed a small, legal security camera near the side entrance, angled perfectly to capture her comings and goings at night. When the opportunity arose, I spoke casually with mutual friends, asking innocuous questions about the travel club, watching their expressions carefully. A few hesitated before answering, their glances uneasy. The picture grew clearer with every passing day. And yet, every morning, we sat together at breakfast as if nothing had changed. I poured her coffee. She smiled and kissed my cheek before leaving for meetings. We lived inside a quiet performance, both actors reading from separate scripts. But my part was no longer driven by love, it was driven by preparation. I wasn't gathering evidence for the sake of confrontation. I was building a foundation for something far more important: protection. For Madison. For myself. For everything we had worked so hard to build. The emotional storm still raged beneath the surface, but my resolve grew stronger with every fact uncovered. The more I knew, the calmer I became. Because soon, very soon, this charade would end. There's a strange kind of peace that settles over you once you stop pretending. The night I saw them together at the cafe was the last time I allowed emotion to dictate my actions. After that, every step I took was deliberate, calculated, like moves on a chessboard. I wasn't seeking revenge. I was building protection. Not for Allison. Not even for myself. For Madison. My first stop was Edward Graves, an attorney I had trusted for years, a meticulous man with a sharp mind and an aversion to drama. His office overlooked the inner harbor, the morning sun gleaming off the water as we sat across from each other. Edward leaned back, folding his hands. "You're absolutely sure, Ethan?" "I am," I replied, sliding the small folder across his desk. Inside were printed screenshots, transaction records, calendar entries, and photos, carefully time-stamped and organized. Months of silent work now laid bare. He flipped through the documents slowly, nodding occasionally. "You've done your homework. I didn't want to come to you until I had something concrete." He looked up, his expression neutral but firm. "Good. This gives us a strong position. Maryland doesn't favor one parent over the other, but with Madison involved, we want to control the narrative from the start." We spent the next 2 hours mapping out possibilities, custody arrangements, asset division, financial disclosures. Edward explained how to freeze joint accounts, protect retirement funds, and secure evidence admissible in court. He emphasized discretion, no emotional confrontations that could be weaponized later. "The more calm and stable you appear, the stronger your case will be," he advised. That night, after Madison was asleep, I quietly gathered all essential documents: marriage license, property deeds, tax returns. I made digital copies, encrypted backups. Every safeguard I could think of was set into place. I also scheduled an appointment with someone I hadn't spoken to in years, Mark Bellamy, my old college roommate, now a licensed psychologist. Sitting across from him in his private office was both strange and oddly comforting. "You don't strike me as the kind of man who falls apart easily," Mark said after I shared everything. "I'm not falling apart. But I need to stay clear-headed. For Madison's sake." He nodded, his gaze steady. "That's exactly why you came. You're doing the right thing. You're building something stable while the ground beneath you shifts. That takes discipline." We discussed coping mechanisms, not to numb the pain, but to manage it. Journaling. Structured routines. Avoiding impulsive reactions. Mark emphasized the importance of maintaining a predictable, calm environment for Madison. Children, he reminded me, don't need to know the full weight of adult betrayal. By the following week, I had retained a private forensic accountant recommended by Edward. She worked quietly, reviewing Allison's financial activities. The picture that emerged confirmed what I suspected: funds transferred discreetly, small amounts withdrawn in patterns designed to avoid attention. Hotel stays categorized as consulting fees. Boutique charges disguised under club-related expenses. The most difficult part was pretending. Every morning, I woke up next to Allison, made coffee, packed Madison's lunch. We spoke about meaningless things: the weather, weekend plans, school events. She continued her rehearsed version of normalcy while I rehearsed my role as the unsuspecting husband. One evening, while Allison was attending yet another club fundraiser, I installed additional security measures at home. Small, discreet cameras, not invasive, but positioned to confirm late-night returns and visitors when I wasn't home. They fed directly to a secure cloud server. The footage didn't disappoint. Twice over the next month, I watched as Ryan dropped her off at the corner, just out of sight from most neighbors. Once, she even lingered in his car for several minutes, their silhouettes briefly illuminated by the dashboard glow. More evidence. More truth. I also began preparing Madison for the eventual shift, carefully, subtly. We started spending more time together on weekends, creating new routines that didn't rely on Allison's presence. Cooking meals together. Visiting the aquarium. Building model ships on Sunday afternoons. Each moment was a quiet investment in stability for when everything changed. The final step was securing our financial standing. Edward arranged for an emergency account in my name only, funded and ready, separate from any joint assets. He walked me through the process of filing temporary custody requests and emergency financial protection orders if necessary. "You're building a fortress," he remarked one afternoon. "Quiet. Strong. Exactly how it should be." As the weeks passed, Allison remained blissfully unaware, continuing her carefully balanced double life. She spoke about upcoming trips the club was planning: Charleston, Savannah, a potential retreat in Napa Valley. Her face lit up whenever Ryan's name slipped into the conversation. It was almost surreal to watch her speak so openly while the walls closed in around her. Then came the moment I had been waiting for. Edward called to inform me that all necessary documents were prepared. The divorce filing, the custody proposal, the financial disclosures, all meticulously organized and ready for submission. "It's time," he said simply. I sat alone in my study that night, staring at the neat stacks of paper. The house was silent. Madison was asleep. Allison wouldn't be home for another hour. The ashtray sat beside me on the desk, a relic from our first trip together to Charleston, where we bought it from a street vendor. Once a symbol of shared memories, it now served as something else entirely, a reminder of everything I was preserving, and everything I was letting go. My hands no longer trembled. My mind no longer raced. Tomorrow, the confrontation would come. And I was ready. The morning sunlight poured through the tall windows of the living room, painting warm lines across the oak floor. Allison sat across from me, her hands neatly folded on her lap, her face carefully neutral. She had no idea what was coming. On the coffee table between us sat the old ashtray, our Charleston souvenir. The weight of it grounded me, a silent witness to what was about to unfold. I spoke first. Calm. Controlled. Allison, we need to have a serious conversation. She offered a polite smile. Of course. What's going on? I reached down and slid a folder across the table. I know about you and Ryan. Her smile froze, and for a brief second, she blinked as if processing the words. What are you talking about? I didn't flinch. The meetings. The late-night calls. The hotels. The boutique receipts. The surveillance footage. The text messages you thought were deleted. I know everything. Her mouth opened slightly, as though to protest, but no words came. A faint color rose in her cheeks. Allison, I continued, voice steady, I didn't want this. I hoped it was something else. But you made your choices. And now I've made mine. She finally found her voice, soft at first. Ethan, it's not what you think. I raised my hand slightly, cutting her off. Please. Don't insult both of us with lies now. This isn't an argument. It's a notification. I let the words settle. She shifted uncomfortably. I never meant to hurt you. You did hurt me. You hurt all of us. But this isn't about pain anymore. It's about consequences. Her eyes flicked toward the folder, then back to me. What are you going to do? The paperwork is complete. Divorce filings. Custody proposals. Financial disclosures. Everything is legally sound and ready for submission. My attorney will deliver the documents this afternoon. Tears welled up in her eyes, but I saw the calculation behind them. She wasn't grieving, she was strategizing. You're doing this to punish me? No, I said softly. I'm doing this to protect Madison. And myself. I've prepared thoroughly, Allison. Every detail has been reviewed. Every asset accounted for. You will be treated fairly, but you will no longer manipulate this family. The room grew heavy with silence. Finally, she exhaled. I never wanted it to go this far. It went exactly as far as you chose to take it. She looked down at her hands, defeated, but still trying to hold onto some sliver of control. Is there anything left to discuss? I shook my head. No. The attorneys will handle everything from here. As I stood up, I glanced once more at the ashtray, the symbol of what we once were, and now, what we were ending. I left her there, sitting alone beneath the same morning sun that once lit our happiest mornings. The confrontation was over. The rebuilding would now begin. The legal proceedings unfolded exactly as Edward had predicted. The evidence spoke for itself. Allison's lawyer attempted to negotiate, to challenge the custody terms, to argue financial hardship. But every claim unraveled under the weight of documentation I had prepared months in advance. Photos. Bank records. Recorded footage. Verified timelines. In the end, the court granted me primary custody of Madison. Allison was awarded scheduled visitation, carefully outlined and supervised where necessary. Property was divided equitably, with the house remaining in my name to provide stability for Madison. The joint accounts were closed, assets allocated, and monthly support payments established with clear legal boundaries. It was surgical, precise, professional. No courtroom dramatics. No shouted accusations. Just facts, presented one after another, until the judge simply nodded, signed, and closed the file. When it was done, I didn't feel victorious. I felt free. The weeks that followed were filled with quiet adjustments. Madison adapted quicker than I expected. Children are remarkably resilient when given stability. She flourished under new routines, piano lessons, weekend museum trips, long walks through Patterson Park. We even adopted a small dog, something she'd wanted for years but Allison had always vetoed. At night, after Madison was asleep, I often found myself sitting in the study where so much of my preparation had taken place. The old ashtray still sat on the desk. I no longer saw it as a token of loss. Instead, it had become a simple object, its weight no longer tied to memory or pain. Just glass, resting silently, powerless over me. I returned to hobbies I had long neglected. Restoring antique furniture, repairing delicate woodwork, work that required patience and attention to detail, the very skills that had carried me through the worst of it. And slowly, as weeks turned into months, the heaviness in my chest began to lift. One evening, Mark, my old friend and psychologist, joined me for coffee. As we sat on the porch watching the city lights flicker, he asked, "So, what's next?" I smiled. "I've been thinking of starting something. A blog, maybe. A place for people like me, people who find themselves blindsided and don't know where to start." He nodded approvingly. "Turn your experience into something useful." "That's the idea," I said. "Help others navigate what I went through, calmly, methodically. Without letting the anger destroy them." As we sat in comfortable silence, a gentle breeze rustling the leaves, I realized how far I'd come. Not because I had fought back with rage, but because I had refused to let betrayal dictate my future. The following morning, I walked Madison to school as we always did. As we passed under the old gas streetlights, one very much like the one where I had first seen Allison and Ryan months ago, I paused for a moment, looking up. The light hummed gently above me, casting a warm glow over Madison's smiling face. She tugged at my hand, urging me forward. And we kept walking.